Jennifer Helene, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Yes, it's going to be a fun conversation. And before we get into it, we want to know if you have a moment of gratitude and what you'd like to share with our listeners.
So this morning, I always have a moment of gratitude right when I wake up. And when you ask that question, it reminds me of that moment. And I just felt so grateful. And I still feel so grateful for this body and how it functions and how it serves me. And what a miracle it is to be alive. Everything from the breath to my skin to my organs. So I'm just so grateful for our bodies and how they serve us.
So you said you practiced that this morning. So I have a question for you because I'm doing meditation with my students right now, and a lot of them have never done it before. So it's brand new to them. So I'm wondering how long you've been doing meditation for and how hard it was for you to get into it.
So I've been meditating consistently for over 20 years. It's like 21, maybe 22 years now. And I have a teacher who very much opposes the term meditation. And it's because he feels it's really lofty and it's unrealistic to think that you can sit and think of nothing. And he's pretty outspoken, but he's a very incredible yoga teacher. And so we have in our system of yoga the 8 limbs, and there's kind of the last 4 really deal with the different levels of meditation. And I think for me, what convinced me to get into it was the promise of it. And I was committed and I believed in my teacher that the promise of what the meditation would bring is something that I desired. And I'm not really proud of that. Like, I don't think that's a good place to be, because pride, causes all kinds of afflictions. But it was the thing that got me to start and helped me to continue. And then I realized, oh, like my day is so different if I don't do this. And that's what's kept me with it all of these years. And I think actually I will continue this to my last breath. And it's infused my life in such a way that, yes, I have my morning time, but it's actually a practice that infuses my entire life.
I love that. And I think that a lot of my clients will say, do I need to eat this way forever? Or do I need to take this supplement forever? Or do I need to do something forever? And when they don't, and they have the day and they feel awful and something goes wrong, or they've, their pain comes back or what have you, it's unfortunate, but it's almost a good thing at the same time too, right? Because when you have those days where, the doorbell rang and it got you out of bed super fast, and then before you knew it, it was 10:30 and you didn't get your meditation in, and that's the day where you're like flustered all day. Having those days of it not going smoothly reminds you how important it is to do the things that help you do things smoothly and have less stress in your day, because the stress in your mind and the way that you react to things or react with things has a significant effect on your overall health.
Completely. And it changes. Like I know the way I used to sit, or the way I used to lay, or the breathing exercises, like it also has shifted. So I think that life demands different things for us and helps us to fine tune. The way I eat today is totally different than the way I ate when I was pregnant with my daughter 16 years ago. And so it's just this evolution that our lives and our bodies demand of us to shift and fine tune. And it is forever. I mean, folks, good news, bad news, I don't know, but like it is forever in a lot of ways. Because like, what serves you? What serves your highest good? And what practice, and what are you practicing that serves that highest good? Because whatever we're practicing, we're strengthening, right? I would say your daily practice is your strongest medicine. And to examine what you're practicing, whether it's sitting and watching Netflix and eating junk food, or it's going for a run, or whatever it is, like your practice is really what you're strengthening.
And our son will say to us, I don't want to take the deep breaths, they don't work, or I don't want to do this, it doesn't work. And it doesn't necessarily work the first time, but we've got to build that muscle. I say, were you able to serve the ball over the net the first time? And the little smart aleck who could serve the ball over the net the first time says yes. And so I have to think of a different example, but most of us can, when we try something new, if you're a knitter, it's not going to be the best stitch the first, couple of scarves that you make, right?
Yeah.
Everything needs to be practiced.
I think it's a process of building awareness around everything and everyone we're around, and that affects everything that we do, whether it's our relationships or our livelihood, whatever it is. It's building that awareness, and I think that's what's really helping me personally when I do meditations, and I think that's probably the case for a lot of people.
The awareness, so you are able to be more aware, or what is it that meditation serves for you?
It brings awareness to thoughts and feelings, emotions, people around me, and just gives me more clarity rather than just doing and not paying attention.
Right. Totally. I get that. Totally. And that's why I call it a practice, because it's there's no right way necessarily to do it. It's just you just keep trying. You just keep swinging,
Right.
your son, you just how old is your son? Just out of curiosity.
13.
He's 13. Yeah. I mean, so my daughter too, as health enthusiasts, the three of us, our kids are going to be no, until they're not. My daughter's really come around. She's 16 now. And she's I'm turning into you. It's really annoying. I'm but I feel better when I eat like this. And I'm I know. I'm sorry.
and now and now you can say it on your own, and it's not just me, paving the way. But your journey and your health journey and your plant-based awareness started really young, right?
Yeah, my mom was really into meat, and I just wasn't. It just made me feel so sick. And I just remember coming from school one day. I think I was 9 or 7. I was really young, and I was just I'm not. I had my little thing. I was put my hands on my hips, and I was I'm not eating meat anymore, Mom. And she's oh, okay. Why? And I said, well, it makes me feel icky. It hurts my stomach, and I just don't like it. And she said, okay, but you have to eat crabs. And I'm no, Mom, I'm not eating any meat. She's that's not meat.
Crab meat.
Anyway, our family is in the crab business on the East Coast of the United States. And anyway, so it was a funny conversation, but she was very amenable. And, I was a vegetarian for many years. And then I think dogma is also dangerous. I got really into nutrition when I couldn't get my skin under control. I had osteomyelitis. Not telling the story in the proper order, but I got diagnosed with osteomyelitis, which they thought was leukemia. And then I had intravenous antibiotics, and I was in a wheelchair because I had a catheter. And, it was very, very complicated time for our family from ages 7 to 10 for me. And that kind of left me with a really destroyed gut, as you can imagine, some obesity. And then I had massive skin problems, which became an issue more so in my 18 to 24. And so I went to Western medicine. I don't know why, but I did. And I exhausted all of those avenues, injections for the cysts, Accutane, tetracycline, medicine, all the drugs you could ever imagine, on top of all the antibiotics I'd taken my entire childhood, including the intravenous ones for an entire year. So you can imagine, right? Decimated gut. And that's when I kind of found I had to find solutions for myself because Western medicine failed me. And then I started eating meat again, just on a trip, and I got hospitalized with a kidney infection, a severe kidney infection. So it kind of freaked me out. Not kind of, it definitely freaked me out. And I thought, well, gosh, maybe I should have a little bit of meat every once in a while, just so my body doesn't look at it as this foreign object. Now, I don't know if it was correlated, but that's the correlation I made in my brain. But then I went totally plant-based, vegan, about 7 years ago or longer, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, after my last ditch effort with the keto and paleo diet to deal with a pre-diabetic diagnosis that I had gotten. And that didn't work. Surprise. And now I've been really hardcore for the last seven years or so.
So I find it super interesting. You were somebody who already liked nutrition and the science behind it. Am I right? And
oh yeah, I got a bachelor's and master's in nutrition. Yeah, totally.
And you chose the paleo and keto method to deal with the pre-diabetes. So what was your rationale then?
I'm really close friends with an endocrinologist and a urologist who's also holistically minded, and it was his advice. And I could not beat this pre-diabetes diagnosis. First, I started with paleo, then I went to keto. I felt so awful, but mostly I just couldn't stand the odor of my body. And my bowel movements were a huge indication that something was definitely off. That didn't feel right at all. And then I went to a plant-based diet. And then I even just stopped eating all fruit, all grains. Like I went really hardcore, and it got worse and worse and worse. And it was my good friend, Tom, who was a registered nurse. He's like, you need to start eating breakfast. And I'm like, natural hygiene. I'm not eating breakfast. I'm not hungry for breakfast. I just don't eat breakfast. He's like, okay. So he just kind of like, but finally I gave in and it worked. I needed, because I was working out so hard in the mornings. I actually really just needed those. I need a little bit of, I guess, glucose or something in the morning. And it really, my numbers went down, but it took me 3 years to figure it out.
So you weren't eating breakfast at all at that point, and then you started to eat breakfast, and that made a big difference for you.
It took away the pre-diabetes. It just disappeared. Yeah. And numbers, the blood numbers never lie.
What kind of breakfast were you eating? Can I ask?
Yeah, sure. Like steamed apple with cloves. I was like, still in that whole like the natural hygiene mentality, like fruit before noon. So I would do fruit. Sometimes I would do fruit with I don't know, like some chia. I would do chia pudding occasionally, super high fat though. So, and then one of my favorite breakfasts still even today is like braised squash with an apple and like Ayurvedic spices. It's one of my favorite breakfasts of all time. But back then, I think I was eating a lot of fruit and then fruit and nuts. And then, like macadamia nuts with apples, kind of blended with some spices and those kinds of things. Maybe even some manna bread, I think I remember. It's hard to find quality bread. Really, it really is, unless you're making it yourself.
Right.
And I'm just thinking about making the braised squash with apples fresh every morning. And I'm like, oh, do you make it fresh every time you eat it, or do you make it in batches and keep it? Because it seems like it would have the most healing properties to make it fresh every morning. But I mean, working parents, young children.
Never mind that, because squash doesn't seem like breakfast to me. It's just like,
got it.
How everybody listening right now is like, who eats braised squash for breakfast? Like, what's that all
Women
about?
in menopause eating sweet potatoes with spinach for breakfast to help.
So good.
Like, yeah.
It's just not something that most people
put some
would
cinnamon
think about.
on it. It's sweet.
Exactly. I put cinnamon on it and I put nut milk. I pour nut milk over it. And then, but like for a saltier breakfast, I really love roasted mushrooms with braised kale. That's a delicious breakfast. Maybe even like a sweet potato or some squash with it. That's a really hearty, solid breakfast. I don't have that often, but that's a good one.
You're just throwing the standard breakfast out the window
and
letting people reminding people that
food is food.
Yeah, food is food. It can be eaten at any time for any meal. It doesn't matter what it is or when it is. Do your own thing.
Food is medicine.
There you go.
It is. And there's no doubt about it in my mind. I have seen so many miracles. I have seen countless diabetes type 2 reversals, including my father. I have seen cardiovascular disease completely reversed. I have seen cancer completely reversed. I have seen chronic pain completely reversed. ADHD symptoms completely reversed. Anxiety resolved. Like the list goes on and on and on. Mental disturbances. I mean, it goes on. Food is medicine. It can heal and it can harm.
For
and
sure.
we have to learn what we love and choose wisely.
But let's be clear for everybody. We're not saying that, oh, you could just eat certain foods and you're going to be healed like that. Like, it's not necessarily going to work like that for everybody. Obviously, they have to consult medical practitioners and do things properly.
That's right.
And
Adam.
we're not just saying, hey, you're sick, go eat this food, you're going to be healed.
And but for some it does, because
Right.
sometimes it's not just using the food as medicine, but it's what we're taking out that's causing that harm, and depending how long they've been sick. And everybody's really different, and their gut is different, because there's so many people who say, oh, I went vegan for 4 months and I didn't get, I'm still sick, I didn't get better. So some people need actual healing, and some people just need the absence of the foods that are causing them to get sick. And everybody's body,
and a combination.
Every body has a different body.
It's true. It's true. And it's really about how we absorb. So it doesn't matter if you're eating the best food on the planet, but if you're not absorbing it, it's not going to work. And that could be because of toxicity. That could be, because of, bowel issues, biome issues. There's so many factors to it, but it is powerful. And, people know in general kind of what to do. Like they know that pizza, French fries, and ice cream probably aren't the best options, right? I mean, I'm not saying you should never have those foods. I'm just saying that, on a regular basis, it's probably not going to create the health outcomes that you might be seeking, like weight loss or energy or like vitality and all that kind of good stuff.
So vitality, how do you define vitality food?
Vitality is something that gets cultivated. It's like a nectar. And it's through food, right? But it's also through movement. And it's also through mindset. So to me, there's this trinity of factors. Because, when I work with clients over the years, just with food, it's like it gets you in a good place, but it only gets you so far. But when you combine food with movement, like an emotionally engaged movement practice, that is like the whole nother level, get to the next level. And then if you can look at the underlying ways of being and the belief systems, and then you can create true vitality. And that nectar that gets created, I mean, it's like, I don't know if anyone's ever grown a fruit tree, but the fruit doesn't come the first year usually. It takes a little bit of time for the tree to bear fruit. And it's the same thing with our bodies. We have to take care and be consistent over time with adequate rest, adequate hydration, foods that help, create, circulation and oxygen in the body, the movement practice that is neither too intense nor too, absent. And then of course, looking at, those belief systems that may be leaking our power out or, exhausting us in other ways. So it's a process. So for me, vitality is really, positive energy, balance, flow, grace, and there's just like glowing positive energy that I notice in my clients, and that this just gets cultivated. And it's practice, right? Cultivation.
And it's a process. It's the process of the practice to get to that point of vitality. Yeah.
And so we have a plum tree, and sometimes I wish we didn't, because if I don't clean up the plums that fall on the ground, our backyard smells like a winery.
And it becomes a zoo.
And it's all full of wasps. But that aside, what I find is the plum tree also has cycles. So even though it creates plums every year, some years are really plum years where like you could bring it to the market and sell it and have an abundance of it. And other years are a lot slower too. And I think that that's a good metaphor for the body, where, maybe you've become a runner, but to run consistently all year round at a very high level is not necessarily what the body needs. We need ups and downs. We need to, eat with the weather. So someone living down in California, the weather changes, but not as much as it does up here, in the Buffalo, Toronto area, where we really need to look at what we're eating for every season as well. So, we've all got cycles.
Oh, I love that. Honoring the cycles. And squash is in season right now, where you are and where I am. So it's like I'm like such a squash fan. So I've got some in the oven cooking so I can smell it.
So how do you tell, everybody wants to know now, how are you cooking your squash? What are you doing right now?
So I've been really working to avoid all vegetable oils. And so I just slice it in half and I place it face down on a baking sheet or a ceramic cast iron pan or, a glass, something, you can just face down And what happens like this is steam that just kind of cooks it without any fat, which I love. And so I've got a spaghetti squash in there. I'm going to do with like a fresh tomato sauce because it's just the end of tomato season. It's so epic. And the other ones are delicata squash, and I'm going to blend those into a chia pudding. But I find chia to be really heavy, so I'm just going to use a little bit of chia. And that's just like a really fun kind of pumpkin pie filling flavor. That'll be a great breakfast as well.
With a couple of spices, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, I put like a huge knob of ginger in there, and nutmeg and cinnamon and mace and cardamom and cloves. Yeah.
Very nice. So I guess the opposite of living food, or would you consider that living food?
I mean, the squash is roasted, but everything else is raw. And yeah, it's a balance. I mean, living foods are extremely healing, and I've spent years just eating raw food, and it has its benefits, but I think everyone has a different constitution. And what I found for myself was that over time, it was imbalancing for me. I experienced constipation and stagnation. And then I learned about this Ayurvedic healing modality that actually is right now. It's called the Navaratri. And it's a restorative cleanse as opposed to a kind of depleting cleanse. So detoxifying the body based on the cycles of nature, right around the equinox, spring and autumn, and just helping the body to, detoxify itself. And it's a really powerful, powerful cleanse. And it taught me about how to eat food at body temperature at a minimum, and that it should be similar to what we find in our stomach, like kind of juicy, lots of liquid. And so it really has changed the way I look at food and at detoxification. It was really, I remember I went to this retreat and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to detox from the detox. This is so annoying, but I had one of the most profound experiences of my life.
I think it's really important to look at the constitution of the body. And if you're off balance, you need to do work to get back on balance. Last year at this time, Adam and I a little bit later, it was more into fall. So I'd say like it was November-ish. We started eating luckily we have the same constitution. We started eating for our constitution. So a lot of baked sweet potatoes, baked squash, right? All soups, all stews, all the warming spices. And I had gone actually 2 years eating salads in the
fall and winter.
No, yeah, and eating salads in the fall and winter and wanting soups and hot foods throughout the summer. And I was drinking lots of turmeric lattes and things throughout the summer. And that's complete opposite to what should be happening up here in Canada, maybe Australia, if you think about it here, but it was a complete opposite. So my constitution was off balance, and that reset it. And I had a beautiful summer with wanting raw vegetables and more salads. And I barely pulled out, except to make beans, I barely pulled out the Instant Pot. I didn't make any meals in the Instant Pot. Things were just a lot more, kind of readily made or lightly cooked or gently air fried, right? Like that's more what I wanted. So I find that I'm totally on balance now with the cycle of the seasons without even thinking about it.
That's so beautiful. Love that. And I don't know, do your listeners know what constitution means?
So we've talked about it before, but in case they haven't, why don't you go ahead? Do you want to go ahead and?
Well, I mean, I think we probably all have a slightly different understanding of it, but for me, it's based on the Ayurvedic system of our dosha, and it's usually like air, fire, and earth, and a combination of those. And when one of those gets out of balance, then you have different conditions. Like I have a lot of fire and a lot of earth, which is pitta kapha. That's how they call it. And so I'll get congestion in my skin. If I'm eating too many heavy foods, I might get weight gain, right? That shows the kapha is out of balance, or I might get skin rashes if the pitta is out of balance, or I might get kind of hot-headed when my pitta is out of balance. So again, going back to what Adam said, really having that awareness of what the body wants, what season we're in, just increasing that awareness is so critical, just to be able to make the choices for our constitution. And you can take quizzes online, right? I think Deepak Chopra has a really good one. But you guys might have some more insight into what constitution means for you.
No, I think that was beautiful. And what we can do is we can link in the show notes to some of the other podcasts that we've done on Ayurveda, so that they can kind of go back and see. And there may have been some downloads provided as well. So they can go and check that out in the show notes at planttrainers.com. I want to shift gears for a little bit, because I would be upset if we didn't bring this up. You were a contestant on MasterChef.
I made it to season 3 final cast. And oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting that. It was kind of a challenge from these girlfriends. And they were like, I was launching a raw chocolate company at the time. And they said, you got to go on MasterChef. That's a great platform. And I had no idea. I'd missed 10 years of like pop culture in America, because I lived in Switzerland and I'd just gotten back literally within months. And I auditioned with my raw chocolate. They looked like little turds, on the plate. And they were really interested. And then I went in with like food is healing theme for myself, so I made like a reishi and chaga soup. Gosh, I loved that recipe. I haven't made it in ages. Such a great recipe with hemp seeds. And it was a raw soup, but it was just divine. And like a kale salad with cacao and goji. So it was all around like superfoods and food is healing. And I didn't really get very far because their sponsors were like steak from Walmart that year. So the whole plant-based thing, I think maybe it was just a little too early for where they were in their ideology, or where their 22 million, viewers were. But it was intense and it was fun. And I think the best part for me was just being able to talk food with my fellow contestants 16 hours a day.
Wow. So did you have to stay there? You stayed there the whole time, or did you go back and forth?
No, I didn't have a choice. Like, you were locked in. I mean, literally. They even like moved our rooms in the middle of the night. Like, they blindfolded us to go to locations. Like, we had no phones, no computers.
Wow.
I mean, no contact. I actually even considered starting to smoke cigarettes just so I could go outside. Because we were like locked in a room.
Wow.
I mean, and they wouldn't let you speak, and because they wanted your reaction on camera. And it was really intense. And my daughter was really young at the time. I didn't know I would make it so far, so long on the show. And so I literally fell to my knees and I prayed. And I was like, I've got to get back to my girl.
Yeah.
And just like a couple hours later, I was eliminated. But I needed to get back to my girl. It was really, really important.
It's a cool experience though.
Yeah, that's super. I have more questions, but I don't know if you signed like a paper where like you can't talk about certain things.
No, I'm out of it's been long enough now.
Okay, so when you did say to them, like did you say to them, I'm not so comfortable cooking this chicken or this pork or something like that?
Definitely.
And can I have another route? Like, were they just flat out like no, or did they try to consider it? Or
no way.
Yeah,
there was no consideration for that. And they actually liked it. They kind of wanted it to be part of the drama. I don't think I gave them as much drama as they wanted. We actually had to do organ meats on one episode, and it was just so gross. I was like, this is disgusting. Like beef tongue and intestines. It's really gross.
Oh,
but no, there was no.
I don't know what I'd be able to do.
I think it would be cool to see a plant-based show like that. Like, just
right?
to show people like how amazing you can make food just using plants, and how the tastes and the flavors, and you're not just eating salad or making salad. You could make so many amazing things from plants, and people don't know that because they don't get to see it every day like they do on MasterChef kind of shows. So I think that would be pretty cool.
If we can find the funding, like, it's a go. I mean, really, it's such a great idea. But it was a huge production staff. There were like over 300 people on the production staff. I mean, it was the real deal.
Yeah.
And I think part of why that happens is because, they've got big pharma, putting in money behind it. And so where would that, A, would they be fought on it? And B, where would that money come from? Like, you're going to have to rally up like Alicia Silverstone and Joaquin Phoenix, and how, like, to get the big bucks to really, I feel like it would be fought, but it's worth the fight, because you're absolutely right. Like, we don't just sit around eating lettuce all day and the variety of foods, and the lesson to a lot of people who do go vegan for or plant-based for 6 months or 8 months and say, oh, I had no energy, or I couldn't get out of bed, or my brain fog, or my eczema got worse, or what it is. But you do, like in any, like in eating the standard American diet, you do need a variety. And if people don't know what that variety is because they haven't been exposed to it and know, so there's so much teaching that we can do through a show like that, so that when people do go and try it out for their 3-month stint or their 6-month stint, they could be so successful if they're doing it on their own.
Totally agree, Shoshana. I mean, and let's face it, guys, you can be really sick on a plant-based diet. You can eat prepared foods and frozen foods, and you can make yourself really sick. You have to eat fresh, variety, like you're saying. And I believe in the power of the people. At the end of the day, yes, pharmaceutical companies are huge. I also believe in miracles. And I think that the power of the people will far outweigh any of that. And you think about the power of 22 million people watching MasterChef. And if that were to be a plant-based show, there would be demand. And the demand is what drives the market. Right? So I believe in the power of the people. And I think this show would be amazing. It would be amazing.
Let's see. And any big donors listening? Anybody in the entertainment business?
Let's go.
And I think people are interested. They're ready. The research is out. The physicians committee has made such a huge stand for what a plant-based diet can do. Dean Ornish, Dr. Greger. I mean, it's becoming popular, right? It's very popularized now.
It is. We're just a few years away from that. But being a few years away from that, why don't you let the listeners know what's going on with you now? What do you have? What's your next big project? And if they want to reach out and learn more about you, where do you want them to go?
Oh, thank you. So Jennifer-Helene.com is where you find information about me and what I'm up to. I have my 21-day program that's plant-based, and it's around, of course, food, fitness, and mindset. And it's a phenomenal way to get you back on track, just reset, reboot. And then I have a handful of women that I work with one-on-one. And that's a 3-month program. And that's very intense and very beautiful. And that's all about vitality. And also am I wrote, produced, and directed this amazing culinary institute with the Hippocrates Health Institute. And that is a living foods, plant-based certification program. So you can get certified in 90 days. And it's a really beautiful program. You can learn all about what we do and how we've been reversing disease for over 60 years. It's really spectacular. So when you talk about living foods, like we're not using agave syrup or cashews or even dates. We don't use salt, we don't use vinegar, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why, but we teach you how to do the diet. It's really fun. So that's going on. And then you can find that at Hippocrates. And there's other things going on too, but those are kind of the main things.
Well, that's beautiful. And we'll be able to link to that at planttrainers.com so they could link through specifically to some of those things that you mentioned. And of course, they can reach out to you through those sites as well if they have questions and all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm open to anything, really. You can ask me anything.
That's why we're here. Jennifer, Helene, this has been a fun conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.